My name is Adrian Navarre, the CEO and founder of Ticker Trends. I run a software business and I have many different software engineers, including myself. What we've run into as a business is when token subsidies started to end with large foundation labs, so labs like OpenAI and Anthropic, once they started to shift the usage subsidies and models have become more and more expensive to stay at the frontier, costs kind of ballooned within our business, similar to many other businesses, when trying to allow employees to have uncapped usage and uncapped inference from these models. I think this has been happening across many large public businesses, where many businesses started with allowing employees to use as much AI as possible and kind of hoping that more usage would mean more productivity and more familiarity with AI models and how to use AI effectively. Ticker Trends from the very beginning was an AI native business. I started Ticker Trends when AI was just starting, where it was just becoming useful for coding. And so we've gone from kind of day zero of having models that could barely write any code and would only supplement kind of small repetitive tasks up to today where these smarter models can do virtually the entire process or very complex tasks with human supervision. Within my business, of course, I didn't want to go to my employees or even for myself, I didn't want to say, well, now you have to be less productive because costs are getting too high. I felt as a business owner, it would make much more sense for me to have a fixed cost and be allocated infinite inference. Of course, the economics of this are a little bit interesting, and maybe I'll talk about that later. But when I started to research, is there some way where I can have a fixed cost and have unlimited inference with an AI coding tool, I found that there was virtually no resources on how to do this. So maybe I was one of the first people to try to find a solution for this, and I actually found something that kind of filled my need, and I'll talk about the pros and cons. The solution to this problem of how do you get unlimited inference for a fixed cost is a platform called Featherless. And again, I'm using Featherless specifically for coding, and I know there are other use cases for things like Featherless that people do apply this for. But in this video, I'll focus specifically on how to use this for coding. So how Featherless works is similar to the problem that I was describing. You pay a fixed cost per month, $25, $100, or $200 per month, and you have unlimited inference usage of the models that they allow on their platform. The models that they allow are, I would say, virtually any model on Hugging Face can be deployed through Featherless, and then you can run inference through Featherless. The different tiers give you access to different limits in terms of what you're allowed to use on these open source models. So for instance, you can see here the different knobs that they use to decrease price would be more limited context, more limited concurrent sessions of token output, and then also model size. So at the $25 a month plan, you have more limited parameter size in terms of models, more limited context, and also more limited concurrent streams of tokens that you can be running at once. And then at the upper end, $200 a month, right now, I guess they say no limit on size, although they tend to be able to support up to the high hundreds of billions of parameter models or low trillions of parameter models with 8 concurrent connections and 256,000 context. So for myself and my own use case, since again, I'm trying to present this as a solution for infinite programming usage, I decided to go with the Agent Pro plan for Featherless. And this gives me access to things like GLM 5.2, which for me was a model that made a big step in making me okay with using open source models versus the foundation models offered by other providers. So within this $200 a month plan, I can use GLM 5.2 with 256,000 context window, which for me, again, I found with the different tools and harnesses that I was using with the model, 256,000 context was not a bottleneck for me personally. I do think there might be other uses for models and other ways that people like to do AI supported coding where maybe 256K context is not enough. For me personally, with a decent harness, which I'll show in just a second on VS Code, 256K context was great. And how the concurrent connections work is depending on the model that you're using, it will take up a different number of concurrent connections. So I can show you their system once you log into the platform. Once you log in, you can see the different models offered. Again, it's virtually everything on Hugging Face. You can search for a model. If the model is not already deployed, you can request a new model be deployed, and it takes about 30 minutes for a new model to be supported by the platform. For something like GLM 5.2, which is the primary model that I myself use, this has a concurrent unit cost of 4 units. So with the $200 a month plan, you get 8 concurrent units. And for a large foundation model like GLM 5.2, this will cost 4 units per stream of tokens. So I can essentially have 2 stream of tokens running at once with GLM 5.2 if I'm using Featherless with the max plan, the $200 a month plan. The other limiting factor that I want to mention about using Featherless, in my opinion, I think that even given those limitations like 256K context, having 2 concurrent streams, those are more than worth it for $200 a month for unlimited usage. The only other downside would be how the speed of tokens per second whenever you're querying the model. I've benchmarked the different models on Featherless and seen how fast the inference is. And this goes back to how Featherless, how their economic model works. Part of what allows them to offer these models at a lower price would be, number one, they're using more of a compressed model. So I'm not deeply familiar with the terminology, but they do use like quantized models that are more optimized and compressed for specific situations. However, for me personally, that doesn't impact performance, although I'm sure if you ran benchmarks, maybe it's not going to be at the very, very top of like max thinking performance for the specific model that you're using. But I would say that the performance that you receive is more than enough, especially with GLM 5.2 in terms of it being applicable for coding. Then the other thing that they do besides the smaller context window is they also limit your tokens per second. And in terms of GLM 5.2, the performance that I was able to get, and I'll show it here, it's about 30 tokens per second. And this will greatly vary depending on the time that I'm querying the model. At times, it could be slightly higher than that, maybe 40 or 50 tokens per second. And then at other times, it might be lower, maybe down to 15 tokens per second, which 15 tokens per second is quite slow. And this is likely dependent on the amount of usage going into Featherless and probably different scaling systems that they have internally for inference, and making sure that the cost can be supported. But basically what I'm saying is by paying $200 a month for unlimited inference, the trade-offs you're receiving are smaller context size, maybe not the max performance of the model that you're selecting. And then, of course, in the case of GLM 5.2, 2 concurrent streams of inference, and then around 20 to 30 tokens per second in output. So the downside to this when I'm using this for coding would be a task that takes me maybe, let's say, 5 or 10 minutes with Codex using GPT 5.5 might take around maybe 30 minutes with Featherless inference, just because 30 tokens per second is quite slow, and GLM 5.2 can have quite a bit of thinking time depending on the task or problem that I'm prompting. Also, there's a lot of variance depending on how you fine tune GLM 5.2 in terms of prompts and in terms of how you're trying to make the model think, with how much thinking it will do. And that will vary on performance as well. But overall, I would say that if you're looking for unlimited inference, this is a great solution for $200 a month. And I myself have most definitely, actually, I've investigated the economics of this. I believe I've received much more than $200 in economic value from the number of tokens that I've used with GLM 5.2 on Featherless. In terms of how I've connected this to VS Code, I tested a couple different ways of connecting this to a VS Code extension. The one I landed on that I liked the most was Kilo Code. Kilo Code supports custom endpoints for inference, and then gives you a similar harness as something like Codex or Claude Code within VS Code. Once you download the Kilo Code extension, I think Kilo Code offers some of their own inference stuff that's also usage-based. But if you download Kilo Code and VS Code, then you can go to settings. Once you're in Kilo settings, then you can go to the providers section in settings, and you can do a custom connected provider. In this case, I added the Featherless provider. All I have to input in this case is the inference endpoint, which is like api.featherless.com or something. And Featherless provides you those details. When you're on the Featherless website, you just click use via API. It will give you the endpoint and you can generate an API key. Then you go to Kilo Code, create a custom provider, add the endpoint and API key, and then define the model that you want to use within Kilo Code for inference. In this case, you can see here on the bottom left, Featherless GLM 5.2 is selected. And then when I run any query, then it has the same performance that you saw within the Featherless platform. So that's my setup for unlimited inference with GLM 5.2 connected to VS Code. This solves the solution of having to pay for massive amounts of usage credits through foundation providers. And if you all find any better solutions or, as new open source models come out, Featherless will still work for that once GLM 5.2 is old. And I'm sure within even a couple of months of this video, GLM 5.2 will no longer be the best open source model. But I thought this was a really cool solution. Obviously, there's no like magic infinite Claude Sonnet 4.8 or Claude Opus 4.8 or unlimited Fable usage. Like if you want to use Fable, you're going to need to pay thousands or tens of thousands of dollars per month to use unlimited usage or just as much usage as you want. But I think this is a great alternative that still gives you a very smart model to use and improve efficiency in coding for yourself or your employees or team members at your business.